So we've got the 27th rated safety in the country, Henry Gray, committed to Nebraska last September, class of 2020. So he's entered the portal, and he's, of course, from Miami Central.
And before he went to Miami Central, Henry Gray sat in my music appreciation class at Miramar High School when he was a high school sophomore. So I know him.
Connections are amazing. Go ahead.
I've spoken about Henry Gray, and look, I'll tweet him on the timeline. Like I am not best friends with him, but I worked there for 11 years. I announced all the athletic events. I was a teacher there, and he had my class every other day for 100 minutes for a whole school year. You know what I mean? So yeah, I have a prior standing relationship with Henry Gray, we'll call it. I think that he's a Power 5 player. I've always said that he's a Power 5 player. I think that he's more a safety than a corner. I always thought that, even from when he was at Miramar. I just think that, yeah, I think he's like a half step too slow for a cornerback position, but I think that as like a free safety, I think that he could be really dynamic. I saw him making some plays there. And then obviously when you have one of the better athletes, and again with his size, because he's 6'1", you're going to try him at cornerback because that has a higher positional value. It's like if a guy can play second base or shortstop, you're going to play him at shortstop because the value of a shortstop is greater in terms of what it means for the defense and all those kind of things. Same thing with cornerback. So he's a guy who can play. He's a guy who should be at a Power 5 school. He was committed to Miami at one time, and then he backed off that commitment, and then he ended up committing to Nebraska. And then it said that he has an unexpected family situation. And again, with the prior standing relationship with him, I wish him the best with that situation, whatever it may be. And I wish him the best wherever he may land. I do not necessarily think that landing place is going to be Miami. Just because I think that we need more corners than safeties. And I'm, again, not 100% sure that I would put him at cornerback full time moving forward. So that to me gives me the pause of pursuing him. But I still think that he's going to end up at a Power 5 school. And, I wish him the best. The other part of that question was, do you think that similar things are going to happen with other Floridians who go to Nebraska? I do. Honestly and truly. Jaden Francois, he had that signing day drama where he was going in and out of the gymnasium and he's crying and he's on the phone. And you see him gesticulating with the histrionics and everything on the phone because the guy who recruited him let him know literally 10 minutes before his announcement that he was leaving, the coach, to go to a different school. So he's like, yeah, I committed or I recruited you this whole way. I want to let you know before you go announce, I'm not going to be here. So the school's going to be here. Coach Frost, who's from Florida. Well, he came back to Nebraska. He's a native Nebraskan who's coached at Central Florida. So someone with ties to the state is going to be here. But me, myself, personally, your position coach, who arguably matters to you more than your head coach, unless you play quarterback, I'm not going to be here. And there was that whole thing. I think that Jaden Francois is very short for Lincoln, Nebraska. I think that he is very the time is been ticking on his time going to be there. And yeah, I just don't necessarily think that Floridians are going to continue to go out there, commit out there. I just don't see it. I think that Nebraska always did better with native Californians coming out there. If you look at a Lawrence Phillips as the player, obviously he had the legal issues and the personal behavior. I get it. I'm just saying, before all those issues, if you're just looking at the player, they got a very talented player in Lawrence Phillips to come from California to Nebraska. Now, there might be some of those prior standing personal issue things that I'm not aware of that factored into, okay, why was he getting away from there? That could very well be true. But if you go and look through the history of the Nebraska program, they do better going to the West Coast and bringing them east as opposed to coming to Florida and bringing them west. Now, I know everybody's thinking the same thing, and I'm going to say his name. Levante David from Miami's Northwestern in that 2008 recruiting class, we basically took every other player from that group except for him. I get it. Yes, you did get one in Levante, or he might not have been in 2008, but he was a guy from Northwestern who went out there and he did very well. He was a first round draft pick. Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah, I get it. I'm not saying that there's none. I'm just saying that the prevalence of players going from Florida to Nebraska and succeeding and doing well and moving forward is low. And I think that that's going to be a thing. So they're going to that's going to continue to not necessarily be the foundation of their program. So if Nebraska is looking nationally, I think that they're going to need to maybe turn their attention from South Florida, where, again, you can hit that second tier of player and get a Jaden Francois and get a Henry Gray. And I mean second tier, and I mean that with all due respect, because the top tier are guys who are first-round draft picks. You got your Sony Michels, you got your Grandpa Calvin Ridley, you got your Jerry Jeudy's. That's the first tier. That's the top line. Your Frank Ladsons, your Tyreek Stevensons, your Patrick Surtain Jr.'s, your Josh Jobs. Those are your, I mean, everybody's All-American. They're going to come in and play day one. That's the number one tier. But the number two tier, you can have all these kind of guys, and you can get them, and they can be a foundation for your program. But for Nebraska, I don't necessarily see that. So I, if I were them, would then turn my attention to one of the Texas areas, maybe the Dallas Metroplex, maybe the Houston area, maybe the LA area. I would look at those areas for your secondary ancillary recruiting grounds as opposed to Florida. Although we all know that a South Florida 3-star is probably a 4 or 5-star elsewhere. So I know that you want to go get these good guys from this area. I just don't think that that connection is going to be sustainable moving forward and we've already seen it with Henry Gray. I think that we're going to see it with Jaden Francois. And again, I wish he and them both the best as they move forward. But yeah, I think that Nebraska needs to look elsewhere.
You're the recruiting expert. I'm not. I listen and learn. I would love to have the data, and nobody's going to dive into this kind of project because it's exhaustive, to back up one of your final statements there, in that a 3-star in South Florida, with all due respect, I'm just saying I don't know that they're a 5-star equivalent elsewhere.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that is a little tongue-in-cheek because that is a thing that, like, recruiting fans will say and things like that. I mean, and it's the thing about it is it's not provable. So, like, the data doesn't exist because you're not going to take – who's a 3-star from down here recently? Robert Burns, running back. Ended up as a 3-star because he was injured for 2.5 years, whatever. Okay. But you're not going to take him and then drop him off in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. You know what I mean? You're not going to take a Corey Couch. There's a perfect example for you. Corey Couch, 5'8.5", 5'9" cornerback, 140 pounds in high school, but was an All-American. There was no question when Miami went after him that he could play here. There are limitations due to size and build, but it's not about skill at all, or athleticism, because he's very athletic. But if you were to drop him in a mid-major town, if you were to drop Corey Couch in Philadelphia, even, that kid's a 4-star. That kid's probably going to, again, to somebody's All-American game, you know? But you can't just airlift. You know, I don't have, I'm a Westworld fan, so I don't have the Rehoboam or Solomon multiple realities technology where I can, drop him off somewhere else and then simulate the whole thing. But yeah, you know, it's a thing just where, you know, there's a glutton of prospects down here. And so there are going to be some guys who are underranked on a yearly basis. That's the thing that recruiting analysts and ranking experts have spoken about. I've heard it. I've had these conversations with them. It's just a thing. But it's really just to kind of buoy the fact that, you know, there are so many great players down here, and a lot of them do end up developing and going on to the league where, yeah, you know, you can still find very good quality further down the list of prospects in South Florida than other places. That's kind of the shorthand that's been put to that long idea.
So I consider that to be the talent and the expertise of the scout in question. So if I'm sitting there watching a football game, and if I was able to have the game film to isolate all 22 players, and it was pretty well understood that the talent on the field was equivalent, you know, you're watching an NFL game, for example, or you take it down to the high school level, and you could serve me up 2 equivalent teams in the Miami area where you said these are 2 elite teams. So just about everybody on the field belongs on the field together. I as a football fan and who've been watching for a long, long time could tell you so-and-so won this matchup between, you know, the left tackle and the defensive tackle on down the line. If I had the time to sit there and watch the entire game, the greatness of the scout, I would think, would be the ability to go to Rhode Island or South Dakota or somewhere like that and say, this is a state full of 1-stars. Actually, it's that much of a drop. And there's a couple 2-stars, but this kid's a 4-star. There was a kid Ohio State plucked from Idaho and Rhode Island here in the last 5 years that were close to 5 stars, that they can tell that they're that good. I wouldn't be able to. They're just whipping that dude. They could be another 2-star who's just whipping that other dude, but they know somehow in equating the speed and the explosion, all the factors, that they're truly a 4 or 5-star. That's the greatness of the scouting.
Yeah, and I mean it's seeing a kid not for who they are, but who they can be. And it is, I mean, yeah, that's the game. Like, I mean, everybody knows I used to be a choir director. I used to teach high school choir, and it's that same thing. It was in music and not in sports, but okay, I'm looking at this freshman soprano, and can't read music or has limited technique and skill, but a love for music, and she wants to get better. It's seeing where she can be after 4 years, and that comes with experience. You know what I mean? So like, I can listen to somebody now and say, cool, I see where you are, and I know where you can go. I've already seen that path. So you can go and you can be that scout who went to Southwest Idaho to watch, this one kid or whatever, and see, okay, he's 6'5", 235, but you look at his family, like his dad's a big dude. You look at this, you look at that, you take into everything in account and say, okay, I can see the projection. I can see the progression of him physically and athletically. And with years of experience to build that projection on, then you can kind of have, that's where the foundation really comes from. It's not just like a random guess, like, okay, this kid looks good in a jersey and he has 7 sacks against, somebody who's not going to, he's going to go pro in something other than sports, the other guy. But you can really see, okay, I remember there was a kid from, wherever, and he has a similar build, and he's also like this other kid, and he's also like this NFL player, and it's also that so let me find more about those, and it's all those other layers of data, and then you come all together, you say, okay, there's that, and then that's where the projection in the brain and in the mind comes from, and then obviously you have more film to just go and back that up and say, okay, these athletic traits and things like that, these skills that he has or can develop, or the athletic traits lend themselves to developing the demonstrable skills. And it's all of that kind of goes together.